In this world, mages are rarer than finding a lover. But this young boy named Tyrion was clearly a great mage. Yet he chose to become a nameless shepherd on a mountain. His only companions each day were his adorable sheep. This caused him to gradually become emotionless. Until today, a high-level mana beast appeared at the foot of his mountain. The news quickly spread to the nearby village. An oblivious child there was laughing and playing, saying, "I'm a mage. You mana beast. Take my magic." The little girl across from him happily replied, "I'm the mana beast. I'm going to devour you. Mage, how about that?" The boy then raised his wooden stick, taking a stance, and looked back. He slammed it right into the middle of the girl's forehead, causing her to wince in pain. The girl angrily shouted, "Why did you hit me for real?" But the boy, feeling no remorse, brazenly declared, "Mana beasts are supposed to be defeated by mages. So, what?" The little girl then demanded. "Then I want to be the mage too." The boy selfishly refused. "No way." The girl continued to argue. "That's not going to happen." Just then, Raboth approached from behind with a smile. The kind old man greeted them. "Hello, little ones. So full of energy this early in the morning." The children politely replied, "Mr. Raboth." The boy naively asked, "How can I become a mage?" The old man answered honestly, "It's not something you can become just by wanting to. My boy, mages are the pinnacle of humanity, reigning at the highest level of our society. They are nobles and knights who wield mystical powers passed down from their ancestors. So, unfortunately, you can't become mages." The boy's father, standing behind them, seemed exasperated. "Elder, what are you telling the children? And this isn't their problem anyway. Is it true?" Raboth asked, puzzled. "What is?" The man explained bluntly. "I heard a mana beast has appeared." Raboth's face grew serious as he confirmed, "It's true." This bewildered the man. "What?" Raboth quickly explained. "Last night, Rod said he saw it at the village entrance. Its whole body was covered in pitch black shadows. It was said to be a panther as big as a house. Don't worry. The village chief has gone to the city to hire a mage. He will definitely come. He'll surely be able to hire one, and the mana beast will be eliminated." The villagers sighed in relief. What a relief. They then warned the children of the village. "Listen up. Kids, stay out of the forest for now." Raboth picked up a branch and reminded them, "You all be careful too. Without a mage, it's nearly impossible to kill a mana beast." The man asked worriedly, "Does everyone in the village know?" The old man nonchalantly confirmed, "Of course. He already knows." The man asked further, "What about him?" Raboth asked, puzzled. "Who do you mean?" "Him who?" He mentioned, "That guy on his Aaron hill. Up on this hill." "On the hill. Sheep were resting." He explained to Raboth. "You mean the shepherd, Tyrion?" Tyrion was lying on the ground, looking up at the sky, surrounded by sheep. He mumbled to himself, "This is so boring." The scenery was exactly the same, day in and day out. He closed his eyes in frustration. "At this rate, I'll forget how to talk." Suddenly, Tyrion heard a scolding voice. "You useless brat." An old man leaning on a cane approached, nagging, "The sun hasn't even set, and a young man like you is already slacking off." Tyrion retorted angrily, "You're blocking my sun. Move it." This enraged the old man. "You insolent devil, you help." Raboth asked, still holding a grudge about the past. "Are you?" Tyrion acted as if he didn't know anything. "What past? You mean how you tried to secretly make the flock common property after my mother died?" Tyrion's accusation made Raboth flush with embarrassment. He sat up and asserted, Yes, if that's what you're talking about, then you're right. I'm the petty and not generous enough to share my mother's inheritance. We're not close enough to ask about each other's health. If you have something to say, say it quickly and get lost." Raboth yelled in anger. "You brat." Tyrion's expression darkened as he questioned him. "What is it, Raboth?" Reining in his emotions, Raboth reminded him. "A mana beast has appeared." Tyrion casually replied, "A mana beast?" Raboth stroked a sheep's head and informed him. "They say it's a panther as big as a house. Rod spotted it and is now alerting the villagers." Tyrion remarked, "That's a big deal, isn't it?" The old man asked worriedly, "Aren't you scared? You're the most likely target around here. You know, what else can you do? Anyway, the village chief has already gone to hire a mage. Just be careful. I'm worried about you. That's why I came all this way." Suddenly, Tyrion cut him off. "Adults are so dishonest. Why don't you just say it? Just admit you're worried about the sheep. Not me. Hit with the truth." The old man exploded in anger. "You insolent brat." Tyrion smirked and ordered, "Hey old man, you've said your piece. Now scram. Your breath stinks. It's about to make my nose go deaf." Raboth had no choice but to leave, fuming with anger. Tyrion's eyes hardened. Mana beast. That's the name for them. Beasts that possess mystical power. Or mana. Just as humans have mages, beasts have mana beasts. But would a mage really come to a rural village like this? Am I finally going to see a mage with my own eyes? But a mage, hired by a village chief in the countryside, probably isn't top tier. He chuckled. Still, I want to see one for myself. Tyrion wondered, just how strong are they? Then, suddenly, he smelled something. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. This smell. It's blood. The sun began to set. Darkness fell as Tyrion walked slowly. He walked on, somewhat puzzled. He was confused. It's definitely this way. Suddenly, he realized something. Realizing something, Tyrion stopped in his tracks. His gaze fixed ahead. Looking emotional as his lie in one direction. Tyrion saw it. He saw Bolt's body on the ground and calmly called out, Raboth, you told me to be careful, and yet you went and got yourself killed first. He was somewhat surprised. I can't believe the smell of blood was coming from old man Raboth. Then Tyrion started walking. He began to speculate. This wound wasn't caused by a normal wild animal. It must be the mana beast. Just then, Tyrion looked up in astonishment. He saw a towering monster right beside him. It stepped towards Tyrion, who remained completely still. The monster stood there. It stepped forward and stared intently at Tyrion. Down in the village, a boy asked curiously, Are mana beasts really strong? Dad? Can't even grown-ups beat them. The man quickly replied, They're very strong, son. An ordinary adult, like me, would be torn to shreds. Not even bones left. The boy asked in dismay, Even you can't win? Then what are we supposed to do? What do we do now? The man gently reassured him. Don't worry, the village chief has already left. He's gone to hire a mage. The mage will destroy the mana beast for us. The boy was worried. The mage won't lose, right? He'll teach that mana beast a lesson, won't he? The man nodded. He affirmed, Of course. They are great individuals born with magical power. A single word from them is enough to kill a mana beast. Tyrion glanced at the monster. The monster was beside him, and his lips barely moved. Die. And just like that, the monster was sent flying. However, it didn't die. It just snarled, its fangs bared. The aura around Tyrion radiated immense power. He casually thought. It didn't work. While Tyrion was still lost in thought, the panther monster charged again. He shouted loudly, and the monster was slain. The panther monster backed away, and Tyrion gave a faint smile. He mumbled to himself, I knew I couldn't kill it instantly, but it didn't even stop. The panther monster viciously smashed a nearby boulder. It gnashed its teeth menacingly. It glared furiously at Tyrion, who didn't just stand there either. He crouched down slightly. Tyrion let out a breath. He took a breath and resolved himself. If that's the case, he picked up a piece of stone in his hand. Tyrion pulled out a shepherd's rope and declared, A shepherd has to act like a shepherd. At the same time, the mana beast charged straight forward. Tyrion commanded the stone harden. Then he used the rope. He swung the stone far away. Tyrion's eyes were sharp. They reflected the image of the stone. Then he swung the rope powerfully. He commanded it, Accelerate. Tyrion's foot shifted slightly. A flash of sharp energy appeared. He shouted, Pierce. A powerful blast of energy shot forward, aimed directly at the panther monster. The energy beam struck it head-on. It brought the beast down, and fresh blood spurted everywhere. It sprayed all over. Tyrion's energy beam was still powerfully piercing through the space. Then, the panther monster collapsed to the ground. It opened its mouth wide and roared. It howled in disbelief. Tyrion slowly approached, thinking to himself. The stone was still floating high above. The stone was floating in the air right as he called out. At the same moment, it fell, crashing straight onto the panther monster's head. The heavy stone caused a huge explosion. Tyrion stood silently, watching the smoke in front of him. He watched completely unfazed as the panther monster was annihilated, thinking, That's the first time I've used this on a beast. Should I just dump the corpse in some valley? Then he clicked his tongue. What a pain. Doing a good deed for those villagers without getting any credit. Tyrion sighed wearily. It's all because of those villagers. His eyes reflected the image of the monster. I was originally a mage. I became aware of this special talent 8 years ago. Back then, Tyrion could control objects. On the day I turned 10, he was sitting on the ground, making everything float. Tyrion excitedly called out to his mother, Mom, look, the logs are floating in the air. However, his mother said nothing, so Tyrion called out again, Mom. He continued to show off for her. I have the talent to create fire, and I can also command the wind. The memory of that day remains vivid in my mind. Unfaded. His mother screamed angrily. Stop it right now. That was the first and only time my mother ever lost her temper with me like that. Tyrion uttered in confusion. Mom? She then gently took the floating log and called out softly. Tyrion. His mother sat down beside him and said, Come here and sit with me for a little talk. Son? She asked gently. You still want to stay with me for a long time, don't you? Tyrion nodded sadly, affirming, Yes, I do. Hearing this, his mother instructed him clearly. Then promise me this. Swear that from now on, you will never use this power again. She reminded him painfully. And you must never reveal this power in front of anyone. Kieran couldn't understand and looked up, asking, "But why, Mom?" She patiently explained. "You still remember the stories about the nobles and knights, don't you?" He replied innocently, "I remember." Then Kieran began to recount the story to his mother. People collectively call those who hold this power mages, whether they are nobles or knights. But at their core, they are mages. The nobles and knights are to completely different extremes. Nobles are descendants of the Freyan people, gods who descended to save humanity in ancient times. And knights are actually descendants of those nobles, but their blood has been mixed with mortals. After hearing him, she praised him. "That's right. You remember it very well." Then his mother began to explain. "That's why people must distinguish between nobles and knights, even though both are mages. I'll explain why you're not allowed to use this power." She revealed a shocking secret to him. "Because you inherited that power from your father, a knight. Beyond this village's bamboo grows like countless treacherous nobles. Those nobles always look down on knights. They treat them as nothing more than their slaves." She looked directly into her son's innocent face and reminded him. "So you must remember my words. Absolutely no one can know that you are a mage." Kieran's mother asked softly, "Can you promise me that?" To this day, 8 long years have passed since that day. I have always kept the vow I made to my mother. That promise will never be broken. I have no desire to reveal my identity as a mage, nor do I have any intention of leaving this mountain to go down into the world. Kieran's eyes slowly opened. Suddenly, a furious banging came from outside, accompanied by a shout. "Kieran, get your face out here now." He slowly went to open the door. A group of men with grim faces stared intently at Kieran. After listening to what they had to say, Kieran yawned warily. "So what you're saying is?" He questioned them calmly. "That I was the one who murdered Raboth." They immediately grabbed him by the collar, asserting, "Exactly. You're a shameless piece of work." The man angrily accused Kieran. "You killed old man Raboth, then threw his body out as bait for the monsters, didn't you?" After hearing the accusation, he simply stood silent, saying nothing. After a moment of silence, Kieran spoke up. "I understand why you're trying to pin this on me." Hearing this, they were taken aback. "What?" Kieran answered without any reservations. "The oldest man in the village died only death. Instead of able-bodied men like you who are too cowardly to face the monster, I can clearly see why you consider this the best way out for yourselves." He smiled and expressed, "It's such an easy way for you to evade responsibility and push it all onto me." Hearing this, the man flew into a rage, swinging his fist and shouting, "Kieran!" He just leaned back slightly and easily dodged the blow. In his mind, Kieran thought, "My magic is truly very useful. As long as I desire something strongly enough, it will immediately become reality. The only price is mana." Kieran silently commanded, "Fall." And just like that, his opponent tripped and fell flat on his face. "I don't need to light a single flame. Just a small push like this is enough to make everything look natural. Not too obvious. Just enough so they don't die. I will use pressure to subdue them." While thinking, Kieran executed a series of professional-looking punches and kicks. A volley of wooden clubs was sent flying into the air. And just like that, for 8 long years, I successfully concealed the fact that I am a mage. After dealing with them, Kieran casually dusted off his hands. He sighed nonchalantly and advised, "You should have saved that energy to arrange Rob Old's funeral." Then he turned to the women and asked, "Did you all come here to cause trouble too?" A girl quickly denied it. "No. We came here to see you." Kieran. He remained silent, then suggested, "Take this bunch of idiots down the mountain." Then Kieran went inside and took off his shirt. Kieran thought to himself, "The town below is sure to be in an uproar. They'll probably use this as an excuse to label me whenever I go down there to trade. That's fine. I can just teach them another lesson until I get a fair price." Thinking this, Kieran sighed in relief. "I've already given them a beating they'll remember. They probably won't dare to come back." Suddenly, he heard another knock on the door and exclaimed in annoyance, "Are these people insane?" The knocking continued from outside. Kieran went to the door and shouted angrily, "Who is it? Do you really want to be?" However, upon seeing the tall man in front of him, Kieran hesitated. Kieran asked softly, "Who are you? Who are you, sir?" The man replied apologetically, "My sincere apologies. I thought I could get some help for my journey, but it seems I've come at a bad time." Kieran looked up at him, sizing him up. "A traveler." Then he spoke up. "No, it's not that. I apologize. It's just that some uninvited guests were just here causing a bit of a disturbance." Kieran wondered to himself, "Mother taught me about etiquette, but is this polite enough? I've never had a proper conversation with anyone in this remote town, so it feels very strange. Anyway, a group of armed travelers appearing in this boring town." Then Kieran began, "If you're looking for a place to rest." He let out a long sigh. Then Kieran invited him into the house. A table full of food was laid out. Kieran said honestly, "My family is not very well off, so I'm afraid I don't have any delicacies to offer our guest." Kieran replied as he ate, "But this is already a grand feast. Anyway, you've surprised me a little. Have you never met any strangers from afar before?" Kieran calmly confirmed, "That's right. I was born and raised on this hill, living the life of a shepherd ever since. It's very rare for this tiny town to have visitors." Kieran was drinking water when his gaze suddenly froze. "I see." Kieran also lifted his bowl and drank it down. Suddenly, Kwan remarked, "How interesting." Kieran turned to him in confusion. "Huh?" The man bowed his head and explained patiently, "For someone who grew up here as a shepherd, you are remarkably well versed in polite behavior. Your parents must have raised you very strictly." Kieran answered honestly, "I learned of these things from my mother, but she passed away a few years ago from a serious illness." Kieran said cheerfully, "She raised a son to be proud of, so I'm sure she is now resting peacefully with the gods in their heavenly palace. I want to sincerely thank you one more time." Kieran replied calmly, "I'm just living according to what my mother taught me." Then he asked curiously, "But what brings you to this remote countryside?" Kieran smiled and replied, "I've just been commissioned to handle a small matter." Kieran was a bit surprised and asked, "A small matter?" The man then explained, "They're looking for someone who can kill that Black Panther monster. I am a mage." Upon hearing this, Kieran's expression froze. He spoke gently, "Then you must be the mage our village chief mentioned." The man nonchalantly admitted, "That's me. Now, may I ask you a question?" Kieran responded quickly, "Please, go ahead." Kieran probed, "I can clearly feel the presence of a monster in this area, yet I don't see any sign of a ferocious creature around. What's even stranger is that you clearly know about the village chief and the monster. Yet you are surprisingly calm and have no intention of running or hiding. If that monster is targeting humans, its target is very likely you. Aren't you afraid at all? You seem remarkably brave for a shepherd who has never set foot outside this town. Who are you? Who are you? Really?" An answer was uttered by mage. Back in the past, Kieran innocently asked his mother, "Why can't I let people know I'm a mage?" "Mom?" She replied worriedly, "It's because of those terrible nobles out there." He asked with continued curiosity, "Terrible nobles?" His mother explained sadly, "If nobles are like us shepherds, then the knights are no different from the dogs the nobles keep. They might treat you with love like family, but they are ready to sell you off or turn you into a sacrifice whenever they feel it's necessary. I never want my child to live a life like that." "Kieran, you want to stay with me too, right?" Kieran replied innocently, "Yes." Then she instructed him, "So remember this. No one can know that my son is a mage, especially other mages. If they catch a whiff of it, they will separate us, turn you into their hunting dog, and discard you whenever they please. And to avoid having your identity as a mage exposed, you might have to take someone's life with your own hands." Kieran's eyes were cold and sharp. He was not joking when he said that. In the end, it all led to this. Kieran tried to ease the tension. "Why are you so silent?" He also realized that Kieran was being completely serious. He could only manage a forced laugh. "That serious look on your face is ruining my joke." At this, Kieran's facial muscles finally relaxed. He sighed. "Was that a joke just now?" He spoke up, reminding him, "Forgive me. I'm not very good with jokes." Kieran also stood up and approached. "No, it's my fault. I'm the one who should apologize for making you uncomfortable." Kieran smiled and explained, "It's the first time I've ever heard a joke about mages, so I was a bit taken aback." Kieran also acted politely. "Your reaction was so interesting that I might have teased you a bit too much." He held out his hand. "Speaking of which, we haven't had a proper introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you." Kieran smiled and introduced himself. "My name is Kieran, a lone traveler." Kieran returned the handshake. "How rude of me. I should have been the one to introduce myself first." He smiled. "My name is Kieran, an ordinary shepherd." The two sat down at the table, ate, and started to chat warmly. Kieran mentioned, "I just turned 18 this year." Kieran replied, "And I've reached the age of 75. Kieran was surprised to hear that. "You look much more robust and younger than your actual age." Kieran explained without hesitation. "Mages tend to age slower and have longer lifespans than ordinary people." Kieran asked curiously, "What made someone like you choose the life of a wanderer?" The question made Kieran nostalgic. "I decided to leave after 60 years of service to the Arabian family." He recounted, "In my twilight years, I just want to travel freely without being tied down by anything." That sounds like a very free-spirited and romantic ideal. Their conversation continued, making Kieran feel warm, enjoying the pleasant discussion. Kieran also smiled cheerfully throughout the evening. The atmosphere inside the house brought Kieran a sense of ease and peace. Being with such a virtuous person, he never would have imagined it would be such an enjoyable experience. They talked until the sun peeked over the mountains outside the window. Kieran suddenly realized, "Has it gotten this late already?" Kieran smiled. "You're right. I was so engrossed in our conversation that I didn't even notice the dawn was breaking." Kieran pulled back his chair and stood up. "It's time for me to continue my journey." He pushed a coin onto the table. Take this Arabian silver coin. It's the purest silver. Certainly more than enough to pay for my meal. Tyrion gladly accepted it. I will accept your kind gesture. I wish you the best of luck on your hunt. Kian teased. Don't say it like we'll never meet again. Before leaving, he looked back wistfully. Who knows? I might come back a few more times to bother you for a meal. The sky gradually bright and over the hill behind the town. The sheep grazed contentedly on the vast meadow. Tyrion called out loudly. Gather round. Hearing the sound, the sheep stopped and looked up. They gradually walked towards him. Tyrion had rarely felt as relieved as he did today. This is the first time I've ever interacted with another mage. But more importantly, how long has it been since I've had such a comfortable conversation? He cheerfully stroked the sheep's head. His relaxed demeanor and natural sense of humor always shone through his words. He was warmer than any adult I've ever met. That very evening, Kian appeared at Tyrion's door again with a hunted wolf on his shoulder. I'm back. Tyrion was impressed. He is truly a respectable man. He completely changed his own beliefs. I used to think that knights were just soulless machines, controlled like tools by arrogant nobles. Tyrion returned to town with another worry. Anyway, how am I supposed to report this to the village chief? On the forest path, Kanan was also striding along, thinking that his Aran region is now clear of monsters. He quietly observed his surroundings. It was true. The fallen trees around reminded Kian of something. The signs of a battle are still here, but there's no trace of the monster. He stopped in front of a large tree, its trunk cracked from a stone embedded in it. Could the monster have been killed already? Kian stared at it pensively. Who would be capable of hunting it? Did the village chief secretly hire another mage besides me? He sighed softly. But anyway, it's a relief. As long as the monster is eliminated and everyone is safe. That's what matters. A gut feeling made Kian's eyes fly open. Suddenly on high alert, he quickly whipped his head around. The giant paw of the panther monster slowly approached. Along with the foul, dark aura, its head had been completely deformed into a hideous, worm-like shape. However, the oppressive power emanating from this panther monster was extremely dangerous. Kian was momentarily stunned. Wait, is this a monster spirit? He stumbled back in fear. Who would act so irresponsibly? The panther monster quickly raised its paw to attack Kian. Its claw strike made the ground shake violently, but Kian luckily jumped away to evade it. He regained his composure and analyzed the situation. If a monster's corpse isn't properly absorbed or its mana purified after death, it will mutate into a vengeful spirit like this. A professional monster hunting mage would never make such a basic mistake. The panther monster was still frantically attacking Kian. He was extremely confused. The one who killed this monster must have been a mage. But why did he let it become a spirit? Kian wondered. Does he really not know the consequences of leaving that source of mana behind? No, even the most inexperienced rookie would know this basic rule. Otherwise, they couldn't have faced it in the first place. A golden ball of magical energy formed in Kian's hand. Or does he have some other motive? Whatever the case, I must destroy it now. The magical energy transformed into a long beam of powerful light. Kian directed it to attack the panther monster. But it seemed this special move couldn't inflict any damage on it. Kian was astonished by the panther monster's strength. My magic has no effect at all. That means this monster's mana far exceeds my control. He suddenly became panicked when he saw only a pool of black liquid before him. It disappeared. Kian struggled to guess. Is it planning to counter magic with magic? Where is it? From the shadow behind him, a stream of boiling water appeared. The panther monster had appeared behind Kian and let out a ferocious roar. It swung its claw in arc, giving Kian no time to dodge. His arm was severely injured, bleeding profusely. This is not an opponent an ordinary knight can fight. Only a low-ranking noble would have a chance of winning. Kian was knocked backward. He seemed to be growing exhausted, his breathing heavy. To think that such a high-level spirit would appear in a remote mountain village. Life is truly full of surprises. Kian began to give up in the face of the panther monster's terrifying power. It seems my destiny ends here. He bowed his head, his eyes filled with despair. Kian gritted his teeth. But I won't go down easily. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. He gathered a massive amount of magical energy in his hand. I'll pour all my remaining mana into my palm. I just need to land a direct hit as it charges. The panther monster charged forward at the same time. Kian bet everything on this final blow. His expression one of pure determination. He leapt forward. The panther monster also raised its claws. Just then, a huge blast of magical energy flew in from another direction. It sent the panther monster, which was about to attack Kian, flying. The falling debris left Kian stunned. The panther monster had been defeated, lying motionless on the ground after just one blow. The attacker spoke up. Are you alright? Kian chuckled softly in reply. A shepherd's joke can really startle a person. He turned to see Ear and calmly approaching. Tyrion. Kian surprised. So you're a mage? Tyrion admitted. Yes, that's right. Kian instinctively asked. Why did you hide it from me before? The prolonged silence left him feeling helpless. Well, it would be more fitting for me to ask this. Why did you save me just now? You could have easily left without getting involved. Kieran's lips parted. Because, late at night in Kieran's house, the wolf lay motionless on the ground. He tilted his head curiously. Why go to all this trouble? Kieran, not understanding, asked back. What do you mean? Kieran explained. I don't know what the village chief promised you, but I believe that with your abilities, you could easily earn much more money. Huang just laughed loudly. They are truly pitiable people. Kieran bowed his head in silence. What's so pitiable about them? Kieran leaned back comfortably. They live on this frontier, always trembling in fear without even the most basic protection. Kieran interrupted. That's not your responsibility or fault. Is it? Kieran thought differently. He expressed. The duty of mages is to be the inheritors of divine power. Therefore, we should live with the pride of protecting the common people. He closed his eyes and sighed. Perhaps not all mages share my ideals. Everyone has their own thoughts and paths. Thinking about that made Kieran smile faintly. He calmly replied. Doesn't everyone have the right to choose how they live? The panther monster, having recovered its strength, suddenly attacked them. Kieran quickly regained his composure and warned. Listen to me. This is not something we can fight. He was insistent. It's the kind of monster you can't defeat unless you're a noble. Quickly, inform the village chief and help everyone evacuate. The panther monster had transformed. With terrifying blue eyes and a viscous body, Kieran stood up to face it. I will stay here to hold it off. He looked worriedly at the panther monster, thinking, I may talk tough, but I don't know how long I can hold out. Kieran suddenly interrupted. There won't be any problem. He controlled a nearby rock. I believe that if my last attack had hit its mark, everything would have been fine. Kuan Yu was bewildered. What are you mumbling about? Kieran's calmness made him silently realize. Could he mean that his last attack wasn't his full strength? A young, reclusive knight living on a mountain, yet capable of hunting a spirit that requires the power of a noble. The veteran knight keyed and pondered this deeply. What he was witnessing at this moment was not simply a random encounter in the countryside. The countless small stones floating in the air under Kieran's magic were not the impulsive actions of a young knight wanting to escape the noble class. They all erupted at once with Kieran, causing the magical energy around him to swell significantly. The scene unfolding before my eyes. He smiled. Could very well be the beginning of a mage who will change the world. Kieran replied to Kieran. I am also very curious about my own true limits. Hearing this, Kieran became angry. I absolutely will not allow you to act like that. No matter how outstanding your talent is, that entity is still an extremely fearsome opponent. As the panther monster raised its claws, he demanded, we need to coordinate our efforts. But before it could attack, Kieran struck first, sending it flying. Kieran finally realized the difference in their strength. Now, if I charge in now, I'll only be a burden. I couldn't even react to that last blow. He retracted the magic in his hands. At this moment, I can't be of any help. What needs to be done right now? Kieran wisely stood aside to observe Kieran's powerful magic exploding. It's to let Kieran's talent shine brightly. Although Kieran appeared calm on the outside, he seemed to be struggling. Damn it. He jumped back to dodge the panther monster's attack, which was still unscathed. It has no effect. Kieran shouted a reminder. You can't finish off a spirit with normal physical attacks. Kieran backed away from the panther monster's line of attack and asked, then how do I destroy it? Along with Kieran's advice, use fire. Kieran raised his hand, his eyes glowing. Kieran hesitated. Or lightning would also work. A jet of red flame flew out, burning the panther monster's skin. Kieran frowned in confusion. Still no good. Kieran shouted. Not like that. He thought silently. To impose a mage's power on another living creature, establishing a law of causality is the most fundamental prerequisite. Don't tell me he's completely ignorant of even this most basic knowledge of a mage. Kieran suddenly understood. Could it be? He watched Kieran's back as he nimbly dodged the panther monster's pursuit. Was he the one who killed the monster and then left it to become a spirit? Does that mean that in his entire life, Kieran has never absorbed mana before? Kieran had no choice but to teach him loudly. Don't just start a fire. Create it and then launch it at him. He couldn't help but be surprised by this flow of power. Has he already reached such a level of strength? Kieran stopped running and channeled his magic. A blazing red flame appeared in his hand. Kuan watched from the side. If you're a mage, creating a flame isn't too difficult. But controlling it requires specialized training. Kieran raised the flame high. It turned into a giant inferno. This left Kieran speechless. He managed to do it instantly. Kieran quickly ran forward. He threw the blazing red orb towards the panther monster. The large flame quickly engulfed it, its body burning fiercely. The panther monster rolled on the ground in agony. Kieran shouted, stay focused. You need to continuously channel your mana so the flame doesn't die out. With his detailed guidance, Kieran gradually completed the task. You must burn away every trace of that spirit's existence. The flickering firelight illuminated his focused eyes. Soon, the panther monster stopped struggling. Kieran sighed in relief. We've won. He was still in a state of shock. That was truly an absurdly powerful spirit's entity. a spirit that requires at least the power of a noble to fight against. Qian's pupils constricted, and yet, he was able to defeat it. Qian turned and asked Qian, "Is it really over?" The contrasting image shook him to his core. A shepherd living high in the mountains could perform such a miracle. Qian approached. "If you don't want to face another spirit, you should absorb its mana first." Qian asked, confused. "How do I do that?" Qian patiently instructed. "Imagine that you are taking something deep into your body." Qian raised his hand. "All right." His eyes were closed tight. A large stream of mana flowed out from the panther monster's body. It gathered under Qian's hand and entered his body. His eyes also glowed with the panther monster's power. At this moment, every blood vessel in Qian's body could feel the surging mana flowing through him. This new sensation shocked him. Qian smiled and explained, "You'll feel a certain special kind of pleasure. Even seeing it with my own eyes. I still find it hard to believe." He asked again, "So, is this really the first time you've absorbed mana?" Qian clenched his fist. "Yes." Qian watched his back thoughtfully. "After the first awakening, the mana source will grow over 5 months. The best way to increase power is to kill mana beasts or other mages and take their mana." He calculated. But this is Qian's first time absorbing mana. Yet he can control magic with such skill. This proves his innate potential is on a completely different level. Qian finally realized. This means this young man is. He spoke up. "Qian." He looked up. "What is it?" Qian bowed respectfully. "I have been very disrespectful to you. May I be so bold as to ask which family you belong to?" Qian hesitated. "Qian," he replied with great respect. "Yes." Qian looked at the bloody arm and reminded him. "You should clean the blood off yourself first." After returning, Qian bandaged his wound. He repeated once more, "Please forgive my disrespect. For making a noble person like you get involved in such matters. I can only offer my sincere apologies." Qian replied angrily, "I've told you many times that I'm no nobleman. I'm just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his father is." He frowned. "So please, stop acting like that." Qian had to compromise. All right, don't look at me like that." He wondered, "But why would a powerful mage like you choose to be a shepherd? I don't mean to look down on you, but this job doesn't seem to suit you at all." Qian recalled, "It was my mother's wish. She told me to live like this until she passed away." Qian murmured thoughtfully, "Your mother's wish?" Qian repeated his mother's warning. "At the foot of that mountain, there are only cunning nobles. If your identity as a mage is revealed, you will only be used and then mercilessly discarded by them." Quan expressed his sympathy. She was truly a wise person. Qian was also surprised. "I'm a bit surprised. I thought you would think it was just an overprotective mother." Quan replied, "Your mother was not entirely wrong." He bowed his head, his expression sorrowful. "Mages hold great power, and great power always comes with conflict. Just over 20 years ago, a fierce war broke out between the great families. Qian's memory was filled with tragedy. It was the battle between the Arabian clan, which I once served with all my heart, and the great Zaha family. Countless lives were lost in that war." He recounted. Of the approximately 3,000 Arabian knights at that time, more than 900 died. Nearly a third of them fell. Qian was very interested in Qian's story. "Sadly, all those close to me were among that faithful 1/3. He remembered sorrowfully. "My brother Denver, who always dreamed of opening a laundry shop after the war. My teacher Hatmong, who strictly taught me because I still had so much to learn. And my beloved wife and son as well. All of them were killed by the Zaha family. I was the only survivor." Quan fell silent. "That's why your mother was right in a way. A knight's life can be extinguished more meaninglessly and fragile than a commoner's." He reminded him. "However, there is one thing she misjudged, and that is your talent." Qian was curious. "My talent?" Qian scratched his head. "It's shameful to admit this in my current miserable state, but I was a pretty skilled knight. Yet you easily defeated that spirit entity. Something that even I couldn't subdue." He assessed. "Your potential is not limited to the level of an ordinary knight. At the very least, you have already reached the rank of a noble." Quan glanced at Qian. "And among them, you definitely belong to the upper echelon in terms of talent." Qian also spoke up. "My mother once said my father was a knight. Was that a lie?" Qian explained. "In some rare cases, a child with less talent than a knight can still be born into a noble family. Or conversely, a child with noble talent can be born into a knight's family. Looking at it that way, I think it's best for you to leave this hill to venture out and explore the vast world outside." Qian was surprised. "Why is that?" Qian replied with goodwill. "Because humanity is desperately in need of more talented nobles and knights. Humans have not yet fully dominated this world." He thoughtfully recounted the stories. Since the dawn of time, other races rejected by the gods have always been lurking, waiting for a chance to rise again. Qian's voice held a hint of anger. And amidst all this, the nobles are only engrossed in their own power struggles. The door creaked open. "That is why this era craves strong and kind-hearted nobles like you." Before leaving, Qian asked, "Above all, you yourself are not satisfied with this boring life of a shepherd, are you?" The question made Tyrion fall silent for a moment, his back looking lonely. What can I achieve down there at the foot of the mountain? Kian didn't have a perfect answer for that question either. That depends entirely on what you desire. He smiled friendly. Fortune, fame, status, family, or true friendships. Whatever it is, it's extremely hard to find here, isn't it? Kian turned his head, not forgetting to remind him. Just imagine. You could be a knight errant like me, destroying monsters that threaten the people. He left with a final suggestion. Or become an explorer who sets foot in lands no one has ever known. Or even be adopted by a family and walk the path of power struggles. Tyrion ran after Kian to the door, listening to your analysis. I think you have a point. He stood facing Kian. It would definitely be much more interesting than staying here herding sheep. Tyrion gave a wry smile. For the first time in my life, I'm actually curious about the world out there. Kian's encouragement seemed to work. Even so, I worry that I'm instilling baseless expectations in you. I will always support whatever path you choose. He suddenly remembered. That's right. What is your specific bloodline ability? I should have asked this from the beginning. But Tyrion looked bewildered. Bloodline ability. Kian bowed his head. My apologies. I keep forgetting that you're not very knowledgeable about magic. He explained. Bloodline abilities are traits that nobles inherit from their ancestors. The Freyan. Whether one possesses a bloodline ability or not is the dividing line between nobles and knights. Kian raised his hand to create a magical flame as an example. Is there any spell that you find particularly easy and natural to perform? Or any innate ability that doesn't require magic? Tyrion clenched his fist. Guessing. Is it that I'm very strong? Kian replied. Just having mana is enough to enhance a mage's physical abilities. Tyrion recalled his physical traits. I have a very sensitive sense of smell, and I'm also quite skilled at throwing stones. From this, Kian made a guess. If your sense of smell is exceptionally sharp, that could also be considered a bloodline ability. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. And the ability to be a crack shot with ranged weapons is one of the hallmarks of the Arabian family. However, that's also a fairly common trait. Kian asked with interest. Keep going. Tell me more. Tyrion nodded. All right. After a while of talking, Kian came to a conclusion. I see. Tyrion asked worriedly. What's wrong? He couldn't help but be curious about Kian's serious expression. Why do you suddenly look like that? Kian spoke up. I think I've figured it out. Your abilities have the clearest resemblance to one particular family. Tyrion tilted his head. Which family is that? Kian kept his head bowed. A renowned great family. He remembered the savagery of that family and his own past pain. Known as the Trackers or the Master Hunters. The people who suffered loss from the war. It's the Zaha family. The ones who directly confronted the Arabian family in the past. Tyrion was stunned and couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Zaha family. A cold sweat uncontrollably ran down his face. He stared in shock, silently repeating. The great Zaha family. Thinking of this, Tyrion swallowed hard and secretly glanced at Kian, who was silent beside him. Is he saying I share the same bloodline as his enemies? He pressed his lips together tightly, his thoughts in turmoil. What should I say to him? Should I apologize? But these are the actions of relatives I've never met. They're practically strangers. Suddenly, Kian called out. Tyrion, hearing this, he quickly replied. Senior. Before Tyrion could say anything, he gently patted his shoulder to comfort him. Don't look so worried. You didn't participate in that war. Even so, Tyrion was still very uncomfortable. But Kian gave a somewhat relieved smile and advised. That's an affair of the adults. If blood debts are always paid with blood, the feud will never end. Hearing this, Tyrion suddenly asked. Don't you have any regrets? Kian's eyes flickered for a moment before he asked back. About what? A gentle breeze blew by, carrying his slightly heavy words. About telling me to go down the mountain. Kian looked down slightly, then explained in a deep voice. If I go down the mountain and pursue power, sooner or later, I'll join the Zaha family. After all, you're very talented, but I believe in your character. Kian's words surprised Tyrion. What? He looked up, his eyes full of trust. I'm talking about the goodness in you. Because you saved me. You didn't reveal the identity you've hidden your whole life. On the contrary, if someone like you joins the Zaha family and achieves a high position, perhaps you could prevent such a brutal war from happening again. The more Tyrion listened, the more he seemed to fall into deep thought, not saying a word. Seeing this, Kian started to walk past him. Before leaving, he offered some sincere advice. Well, anyway, you don't need to think about it too seriously. After all, you haven't decided whether to join the Zaha family or not yet. As soon as he finished speaking, Tyrion spoke with determination. My mind is clear now. He smiled faintly and turned back to look at Kian. I want to try going down the mountain. Hearing this, he burst into a satisfied laugh. It's good that you think that way. But then Tyrion added. But not right now. He stood facing Kian and spoke calmly. I'll go down the mountain after your wound is fully healed. His words moved Kian deeply. How kind. I'm just a little scratched. You are truly a very good person. A while later, inside the warm wooden house. Kian, with a serious face and a deep voice, lectured. To use magic, you must have mana. That's why mana is often called the universal key. Tyrion, sitting opposite him, repeated curiously. The universal key. Kian's stern voice continued. It's not exactly an all-powerful force as its name suggests. But to use magic, you need a corresponding amount of mana. Tyrion, confused, asked, what's the standard for having a corresponding amount of mana for a spell? The old man calmly continued. I'll explain that right now. He then raised 3 fingers. The difficulty of magic is largely determined by 3 factors. First is bloodline, second is affinity, and third is the law of causality. Next, Kian explained each one to Tyrion. The first, bloodline, is determined by the blood you carry at birth. This applies to most nobles, not knights. For example, it's very difficult for you to heal my wounds with magic, right? Hearing this, he replied, that's right. An image of and appeared in Kian's mind. He continued his lecture. But for the Rav is a bloodline from the south. That's something they can do even without training. That is the power that comes from a bloodline. Tyrion looked down at his own palm and asked, what about the second factor? Affinity. Quan continued. You can also think of it as familiarity. It's the concept that a mage can perform actions more easily, with things they like or are familiar with. Hearing this, Tyrion understood. Like how I create a fireball as if I'm throwing a stone. The old man, pleased, stood up. Exactly. Perhaps if you simply created the flame, you wouldn't achieve that speed or destructive power. And the final factor is the most important, the law of causality. Even I don't fully understand it. At this point, Kian suddenly posed a question. What would happen if you tried to kill me directly using just mana? Tyrion, though confused, answered honestly. Perhaps a few sparks would flash from my head. And that's it. The old man, while speaking, extended his hand to cast a spell on the cup on the table. That's precisely the phenomenon that occurs due to the lack of causality, causing the spell to fail. As electricity swirled around it, the once empty cup began to fill with bubbling water as if boiling, when there is no suitable cause for a desired result, and when the goal to be achieved is too difficult. That is when this law comes into play. After listening and observing, Tyrion seemed to have absorbed the lesson. I think I understand the law of causality to some extent. He then calmly shot a small flame towards the boiling cup. If I wanted to kill you, instead of wasting mana to wish for death, I would need to create a cause that leads to death. For example, creating and shooting a flame, right? Because creating a flame and then launching it seems more natural than directly setting someone on fire. Hearing this, Kian's eyes lit up as if he had discovered a treasure. Exactly. You could have been a scholar instead of a mage. Tyrion retracted his magic and rubbed his chin, mumbling, but I can control ordinary animals at will. So why do mana beasts require such conditions? Kian casually shrugged and explained. It's because of their amount of mana. After that, the two of them discussed for a long time inside the wooden house. Much later, Tyrion broke out in a sweat and sighed softly. Magic really isn't easy at all. Immediately, Kian's stern voice rang out. An outstanding mage doesn't just know how to use mana. They must also understand the principles and circumstances behind it. He looked up at the old man and asked, now that I think about it, does the Zaha bloodline have any special magic? Kian thought for a moment and then answered frankly. They are very good at hiding and tracking. Then he suggested, let's try it once. Hearing this, Tyrion quickly stood up from his chair. All right. Next, he closed his eyes and silently chanted in his mind. I don't want to be seen by others. I wish for no sound or scent to be detected. Instantly, a part of his body gradually turned into a white mist. Without seeing Kian's astonished face, Tyrion asked hesitantly, is it working? Before his eyes, Tyrion's form was gone, leaving only a faint ripple that blended into the air. A few seconds later, Kian finally came to his senses and replied, you did it. I can't see you anymore. At this point, he couldn't help but swallow nervously. Because now, the space in front of him was completely empty. Not even a ripple remained. But in a flash, Tyrion gradually reappeared in the same spot. Kian looked at him and spoke, his voice unable to hide his astonishment. It's been a long time since I've witnessed that. But it is indeed a frightening ability. During the war, the Arabian Knights fear that ability the most. Hearing this, Tyrion mused thoughtfully. This seems like an unfairly powerful ability. However, Kian didn't completely agree. But remember, it's not invincible. He didn't continue the topic and quickly turned to leave. Now, I'll teach you a few methods for training your magic. Kian's action made Tyrion even more curious. Aren't you teaching too much to a maid from an enemy family? But the old man just spoke softly. You saved my life and even treated my wounds. And haven't I said it before? Kian looked down and placed a hand on his chest. His voice filled with certainty. I trust your character. Sometime later, upon hearing the news, the village chief's face contorted as he shouted. What? You're planning to sell the flock and leave? He looked at Tyrion, who was already packed and ready to go, and couldn't help but reproach him angrily. So who's going to herd the sheep from now on? How could you decide that on your own without even discussing it with us? Hearing this, Tyrion closed his eyes in disgust and retorted, "Find a new shepherd yourselves. What I do with my property has nothing to do with you." His continuous threats made the villagers shrink back in fear. "Anyway, I hope you'll buy the flock for a fair price. If not, I'll release them all and leave on my own. You can go find and catch them, but it'll probably be quite a hassle." A villager, hearing this, nervously called out, "Chief." The chief was also gritting his teeth, silently weighing his options. This bastard is a man of his word. Provoking him won't do any good. In the end, the village chief had to compromise and handed Tyrion a bag of money. "All right, I understand. Now, whether you go or stay, do as you please." After that, he and Kian left the village. Tyrion suddenly remembered something and frowned. "Now that I think about it, the villagers still owe you compensation money after everything that happened. Should I go demand it?" Kian just smiled gently as if he didn't care. "I never intended to take it anyway. And you were the one who caught the mana beast, right?" Hearing this, he didn't bother with it anymore. "All right, then now." Tyrion paused and looked at the two diverging paths in front of them. Then continued, "It seems we part ways here." Before leaving, Kian glanced at him with a hint of regret. "I'm sorry for refusing your offer to travel together. I feel more comfortable as a solo traveler." Tyrion also smiled comfortably in reply. "It's nothing. Thank you for everything." The old man closed his eyes and said a gentle farewell. "Tyrion, take care." He also smiled brightly and promised, "Yes, I hope we can meet again with smiles on our faces." And so, the boy stood and watched Kian's back disappear into the distance for a very long time. It was only much later that he realized why he didn't want the old man to be so formal with him. Although he had never lacked love from his mother, deep down, the boy had always longed for the figure of a father. Someone who could be an ideal role model for the strong man he would one day become. As time passed, someone's messy footprints stretched across the sand. The area was a desolate, empty desert, with only the sound of wind whistling through giant rock formations. From a distance, a figure in a hooded cloak was slowly approaching. That person was none other than Tyrion. Suddenly, his eyes widened as if he had discovered something. Not far from Tyrion, a group of people was slowly walking towards him. Are they a merchant caravan traveling from village to village? Tyrion couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. "Great, I'll stop them." He quickly stepped in front of them to block their path. "I'll just ask them for directions." The leader, seeing this, questioned him. "Who are you to block our path?" Tyrion immediately explained honestly and asked, "I'm just traveling alone. Could I ask for directions to the nearest city?" The group replied, "If you follow the path we just came from, you'll find a city called Murray." Their attitude was a bit confusing, but he still replied calmly, "I see." As he spoke, Tyrion slowly walked past them. "Thank you very much for the directions." However, someone stepped forward to block him. "Hold on," he sneered maliciously and questioned. "You just get the information and leave like that?" Tyrion was extremely surprised. "What?" However, he quickly regained his composure, and a murderous intent slowly flickered in his eyes. "So what?" The other man, oblivious, continued to demand. "If you receive help, you should know how to show some gratitude." Before he could finish, the men around them simultaneously drew their knives and surrounded Tyrion. "First, drop that bulging bag." He glanced around and understood the situation. "Highway robbers." The man who had blocked him earlier spoke arrogantly. "So, what if we are robbers?" The leader, resting a long sword on his shoulder, also sneered contemptuously. "Let's just call it foolishness. This is an abandoned land where wouldn't it be strange for someone to die, right?" Next, the man pointed the tip of his sword at Tyrion's throat and threatened, "Drop your bag and cloak while we're still being nice. Killing you and then stripping you will be messy and take a lot more effort." But contrary to the man's expectations, Tyrion just spoke calmly. "I see. So highway robbers can even kill people without batting an eye." At the same time, he quickly recalled Kian's previous lecture, especially when he understood the third factor, the law of causality, and also the things Kian had passed on to him after that. Tyrion's lips curved into a slight smile, his eyes looking at the robbers as if they were moving punching bags. "I guess I'll have to use you all for practice." Tyrion revealed a sinister, ambiguous expression from under his cloak. "I guess I'll have to use you all as practice targets." His eyes suddenly froze, a bit confused by the sound of laughter. The leader of the group seemed dismissive. "This crazy guy is talking as if he's a mage." One of his underlings excitedly chimed in. "Yeah, that's right, boss." His fair fingers gently released a gust of wind. Tyrion swung his arm wide behind him, creating a whirlwind that threw them all into disarray. He threw back his hood, revealing his sharp gaze. "So, instead of just creating wind from the atmosphere, shaping it with my hands and amplifying it consumes much less mana." Tyrion was still thinking seriously. "I didn't know I could create such a strong gust of wind with so little mana." While the others were starting to get up, "What the hell is going on?" He calmly opened the cap of a water flask. The water droplets suddenly transformed into sharp points. under his control. All of them were aimed in one direction. One of the robber's eyes widened in terror. The daggers pierced straight into him, pushing him backward. Kieran opened his palm, preparing an attack. This magic should be useful when there's a lot of water around. Honestly, throwing stones with my hands feels faster and stronger. The leader of the robbers, terrified, hastily begged, "We didn't know you were a powerful mage. Please have mercy and forgive us this time." While he spoke to distract him, the remaining men charged from behind. "We'll give you anything you want, sir. So please, spare our lives." Kieran decisively lifted one leg to a moderate height. As he stomped down hard, a blast of sand from behind attacked all the robbers. The leader of the robbers witnessed this, and his face turned pale. "No way. Quick." Kieran, with a terrifying expression, looked down grimly. "Are they all dead?" His voice then slowly spoke up. "Let me ask you something." The man, huddled in the corner, answered politely. Yes, Lord Mage. I will answer anything you ask." Kieran stared intently at him and asked directly, "Why did you dare to attack me without any plan? If I was just a lone traveler, I could have very well been a mage. Just like now." The leader of the robbers hesitated slightly. "Because you bowed your head." The moment he heard that, his eyes widened. "What?" The man was still bowing his head, sweating. "Even when we used rude words, you still bowed and greeted us politely. So we assumed you were just a weak, ordinary person." Kieran's face was completely expressionless. "Thank you. That has taught me a very useful lesson." Hearing this, the leader of the robbers looked up with a glimmer of hope. "So, you'll keep your word and spare me." But what he didn't expect was a drop of water transforming right above his head. The scene changes to Kian having a calm conversation. "Kieran, from now on, you will meet many people out there. And there's one thing I absolutely want to tell you very carefully." Kieran held his backpack in his lap, listening intently. "Never show any mercy to scum like those highway robbers. Those who never hesitate to harm others for their own monetary gain." The sharp sword lay quietly on the table. "The reason I have to warn you so sternly is because..." At that moment, he had replied very seriously. "I think I understand the reason." Kieran was now standing before the motionless body of the robber leader. "Because a life that you choose to spare, out of soft-hearted pity, might very well come back and directly harm 10 other innocent people around you." His face was impassive as he stood there, muttering, "I've lingered here long enough." Kieran carefully walked on the sand, following the wheel tracks, along the path that those wannabe bandits tried to drag their wagon. The heavy wheel tracks were clearly carved into the sand. He walked on autopilot, following the tracks, a thought deeply ingrained in his mind. He pressed his lips together and kept walking forward without looking back. "I've killed someone." The terrified expression of the robber leader suddenly reappeared in his mind. He felt guilty, but he really couldn't just let them go easily. Because Kian's warning had once again appeared clearly in his mind. And he also remembered the moment the robbers tried to ambush him from behind. Those who have no hesitation in cruelly robbing and killing for their own benefit will surely target other people whenever they want. Suddenly, his boots stopped at an edge. As the wheel tracks in the desert gradually faded, and blades of grass grew over them, covering Kieran's chaotic heart. He had finally calmed down as he recalled Kian's teachings. He was now standing still, looking at the clear blue sky. And then, he continued to step into a completely new and different world. His eyes continuously observed and he exclaimed in admiration. He saw a magnificent and bustling place. So this is the place? The small city of Murray. On the street, a mother was holding her daughter's hand. Kieran, with his backpack, slowly entered the place with curiosity. "This is the first time in my life seen so many people gathered together." There was a towering and sturdy building here. Even the architectural style is completely different from the small village before. Kieran walked through the town, constantly observing but not saying a word. Now this really feels like a real city. He was now in front of a fruit stall. "Excuse me." The vendor greeted him warmly. "Oh, hello." The vendor directly asked what he needed. "What are you looking to buy?" Kieran politely raised a hand. "Actually, I'm not here to buy anything." In his mind, he once again remembered Kian's advice. Once you arrive in a city and need a place to rest, just find a nearby inn. Because whether it's in a village or a city, there will usually always be an inn available for you. In reality, the vendor was now a little annoyed and waved him away. "If you're not buying fruit, get lost." Kieran fell silent, unable to understand the vendor's attitude. Why is he suddenly being so rude? Is there some unwritten rule in cities like this that you have to buy fruit before you're allowed to ask questions? Thinking this, Kieran pointed to a red fruit. "How much is this?" The vendor replied curtly. "To dup. Kieran calmly counted a few coins in his palm. "To dup." The vendor's tone was still rude. "You look like an outsider, so you probably don't know what that is. Paying with a different currency is fine." Kieran was about to place a coin in the vendor's hand. "Where can I find that inn?" The vendor easily gave detailed directions. "Go straight down the road behind that cloak shop. Then turn left. You'll definitely see a building with a blue roof. A wooden sign hung lazily outside with 3 words on it. That's the biggest inn in this whole city. A beautiful-looking girl appeared in the inn. Welcome to our inn. The innkeeper, Lena. As soon as she saw Yurin, she gave him an unexpected compliment. You're a very handsome guest. He smiled with relief. How much for one night, miss? Lena, looking very cheerful, quoted the price while greeting him. 16 ducats. Upon hearing that, he immediately replied, I'll take it. Yurin handed a small pouch of money to her. More importantly, I have something I really want to ask right now. Lena greeted him gently. Something you want to ask? Without beating around the bush, Yurin directly asked his question. Are there any monsters around here with a bounty on them? Lena paused for a moment upon hearing that. Monsters? His eyes were determined and his expression serious as he awaited the answer. I need to start hunting monsters and find a way to help, by absorbing as much mana from them as possible. And he did say that hunting monsters would also earn money. Yurin couldn't wait any longer and asked innocently, Why aren't you answering me? Lena burst out laughing as she tilted her head to the side. Sir. She raised her left arm. Nothing in this world is completely free. In the corner of the inn were sealed barrels. The city hall. Yurin was now sitting at a table, holding a cup of water. What is that? Lena looked at him with some surprise. You don't know about the city hall. You really are a country bumpkin. Yurin sat there quietly, listening intently as she explained. The city hall is where a lot of business is handled. The government officials who work there are all personally hired by the lord of the city. Lena just looked at him where he sat. It's probably closed by now since the sun has completely set. If you want to look for monster hunting bounties, you should go to the city hall yourself tomorrow. Lena stood opposite him, one hand on her hip. So, you're a monster hunter too? Yurin sat properly at the table and asked matter-of-factly, What's a monster hunter? A muscular body of those believed to be so would be able to withstand tremendous energy. It's rumored that if a calmer manages to hunt a monster, they will definitely become a mage. You really want to become a mage quickly, don't you? Lena was still focused on her conversation with him. Of course, anyone who believes in that kind of superstition is a complete fool. Suddenly, a hand from behind unexpectedly landed on his shoulder. Superstition? Another man with blonde hair had appeared from behind him. The fact that someone can become a mage by killing monsters is true. I've seen it with my own eyes. And his identity was a monster hunter. My Dan. Lena noticed his appearance and inquired. My Dan, you're still alive? My Dan looked very calm. I've said it before. I can't die. I won't die until I become a mage myself. Yurin raised his hand to signal him. My Dan pulled back his hand and burst out laughing. My apologies. Yurin took this opportunity to seriously ask for information. More importantly, can I hear more about what you just said? My Dan looked directly at him and replied. About the matter of being able to become a talented mage by killing monsters. Lena sat down at the table, resting her chin on her hand. Listening to their conversation. Mages become stronger when they hunt monsters. By the same principle, if a normal person manages to kill a monster, they can become a mage themselves. My Dan looked at the 4 other men behind him. The 4 of us are hunting monsters to become mages. One of them crossed his arms confidently. That's right. Yurin looked at them with a mixture of surprise and seriousness. So, does that mean one of you has already become a mage? They immediately replied. No way. In the city, there's only the Lord's mage and the 3 people under him. My Dan, while talking casually, laughed quite normally. But didn't you say you've hunted monsters before? For that, your equipment is too poor. Don't you have a single weapon? Yurin took out an object in front of them. I do. My Dan saw it and recognized it. Is that a slingshot? Just by looking at its wear and tear, I can tell you've definitely used it to shoot stones. You've used it many times. Yurin seemed very serious in the tense conversation. Yes, I have. It's very suitable for shooting Anne. Egg's eyes object really fast. My Dan put his hand to his chin, looking intently at the slingshot. With a weapon like that, you could easily hunt monsters like rabbits or foxes. Yurin was slightly taken aback and looked at him. Actually, we were just saying we needed another ranged attacker. Are you interested in hunting with our group? His mouth opened slightly. At that time, Yurin gave a perfunctory answer. No. But anyway, and that night, as he lay on his bed, he thought, there's really no good reason for me to hunt with them. His face looked a bit haggard and extremely tired. Today was truly a chaotic day. The backpack he carried was neatly placed beside the bed. I still can't really believe that I've actually left that village for good. Yurin raised his palm into the air, playing with a bit of magic. What will happen next? His ears suddenly twitched as it caught a sound. Yurin reflexively sat up and looked towards the door. Who's there? He remembered walking on the barren road with Kian. Even when I'm in an inn like this, I shouldn't let my guard down. The old man, walking beside him with his hands in his pockets, affirmed, That's right. Kian looked at him with a gentle expression and a slight smile. A city doesn't automatically guarantee safety. Hearing that, he also replied, I understand. The old man continued to carefully instruct Yurin. So never lower your guard. He also obeyed implicitly. Understood. Kieran was approaching the door while one hand was already gathering magic. The room door opened a slight crack for him to see. His expression did not change. Lena appeared at the door with a smile. Lena. She spoke softly. Are you asleep yet? She then explained her purpose. I noticed this room is quite cold. So, I wanted to warm it up for you. Kieran was a bit surprised. What? Lena put on an innocent expression as she looked at him. Her hand toying with the front of her dress. What do you mean by that? Lena put on a very seductive expression and touched her chest. What do I mean? She still stood hesitantly at the door. It's just as I said. Kieran stood with his legs apart, still not understanding. Just as you said. Lena started her advance, moving closer to him. Just pay a little money, and I'll do anything you want. Kieran was still clear-headed and replied firmly. What if I don't want anything? She deliberately pressed her seductive body against him and teased. Don't lie. I can tell just by looking at your face. Unexpectedly, Kieran closed his eyes tightly. His face as serene as a Buddha's. Lena was so surprised she was speechless, just staring with wide eyes. Kwan, with a very stern angry face, appeared in his mind. Don't. Kieran stood still, looking at his expression without understanding. Always be careful with waitresses at inns and prostitutes, because most of them carry venereal diseases. With a very serious expression, he listened to the old man's advice. We have a good resistance to diseases, so it's fine. But, if you have relations with another woman, you might pass the disease to her. Don't let lust dictate your actions and do something you'll regret later. Lena was now red with anger, storming down the stairs. Cities aren't easy either. From the fruit stall incident earlier to Miss Lena. Kieran went back to lying on his side on the bed. Even for a little information or a small story, you have to pay. The city is indeed quite cold. His eyes shifted towards the direction where sound was coming from. Sir, I have a question. An underling following behind my Dan had a question. Why did you want to invite that guy to come with us earlier? He doesn't seem very useful. Kieran gave a faint, sad-looking smile. Well, that's true. His tone is also rude, like he's bait for a wild beast. But suddenly, his eyes widened upon hearing my Dan's voice. Looking at him reminds me of my younger self. Seeing him hunt with that kind of weapon. I'm really worried. My Dan walked on, smiling kindly. Well, if I'm with him, he might live a little longer. The monster hunter. My Dan. His underlings could only accept it. Well, you've always been too kind. Because of that. Kieran showed a satisfied smile on his lips. Kieran placed both hands behind his head and looked up at the ceiling. The city isn't as cold as I thought. The scene changes to the next day, as sunlight shines down on the city hall. A man at the reception desk was flipping through a file. Hello. What can I do for you? Kieran politely and carefully approached and asked. Are you a public official here? The receptionist replied immediately. What do I look like to you? He didn't beat around the bush and got straight to the point. I'm here to hunt beasts. The receptionist tilted his head, a little surprised. Beasts. Kieran and his gentle words once again appeared in his mind. The world won't be kind to you. At that time, he had asked. Why? He was sitting on a rock, stroking the fleece of the sheep. Because conversely, there's no reason for it to be kind to you. If you want others to treat you well, it's simple. Kieran raised his eyebrows and looked up, waiting for his next words. Reveal that you are a mage, and then commoners will bow before you. The man at the reception desk handed Kieran a piece of paper. As soon as he took it, he was warned. Don't take it outside. Return it after you're done looking. Kieran looked at the ugly drawing of a black crow on the paper. Is this the monster? The man replied curtly. What do you think it is? A cat. The man at the reception desk continued to flip through other documents in his hand. Though it's unlikely. If you kill the monster, bring it into the city. Because if a mage doesn't collect the mana, it will turn into an indeed. He kept carefully reminding him. If you kill a monster and leave it, according to city law, the penalty is severe. Even death. Kieran listened and intently while looking. I know. He remembered the ferocious monsters with their deformed bodies. I know what happens if a monster becomes an Eid. I must not repeat my old mistake. Kieran deliberately asked a question. So the knights don't hunt monsters. The man didn't even look at him and just kept writing. You think they have that much free time? He pushed the information sheet about the crow across the table. The role of the knights is to maintain security within the city. Kieran wanted to confirm. So I have to hunt monsters outside the city. After getting the answer, Kieran turned to leave. That's the job for rogues like you. When the receptionist looked up from his pen, he realized. He's gone. There's about to be another corpse outside the city. A white tie, with no pupil to be seen, was set in a coat of black feathers. A black crow was dying after taking a deep blow to its chest. The people at the city hall who saw it all turned pale. It can't be. The receptionist and the other men stared intently at the crow that was brought in. You brought it back this quickly? Kieran stood quietly beside them, listening to the man's question. You caught it alone? He replied with no particular expression. Just a simple, yes. Tyrion immediately asked for what he wanted. Where do I collect the reward? A rather chubby-looking man rushed to the front desk. We have to give it, right? They placed a small bag of money in his hand. Here you go. You must be tired. Go home and rest. He took it and replied, thank you. After he left, the three of them stood around the crow, discussing it. It's incredible. The wings are still intact. Is it really possible to bring a crow back in this condition? The receptionist's gaze shifted as if he noticed something. He could still see Euron's presence here. You haven't left yet? Tyrion casually asked. Are there any other monsters worth hunting? The man broke out in a sweat. Surprised. What? He stood in the sunlight, still unharmed and very relaxed. You can't possibly continue hunting. Can you? A feast of delicious dishes was laid out. This is the most expensive item on our restaurant's menu. Lena let out a breath after setting down a pile of delicious dishes on the table. I can't believe you hunted 30 monsters in 3 days. Tyrion felt it was quite normal. It's nothing. Tyrion gently enjoyed the food calmly. You must have earned a lot of money. Tyrion opened his eyes and seriously asserted. It's not just about the money. As Tyrion defeated the small monsters, he absorbed all their mana. The real goal is the mana from the monsters. This way, I've definitely gotten much stronger. Tyrion stared intently at his own palm. My mana has increased several times since I met Kian. His eyes remain fixed and unmoving. But I feel like I'm nearing my limit. Just relying on the mana of weak monsters will probably make it hard for me to get any stronger. Tyrion suddenly spoke up unexpectedly. By the way, Lena was startled and replied immediately. Yes, I know. He suddenly asked a question with a deadpan expression. No one stole some of this and ate it, right? Lena, standing right next to him, confirmed. You ate it all by yourself. She tilted her head and complimented him in surprise. You're so thin, but you eat so much. The inn's cook wiped his sweat with a towel. It's been a long time since I've prepared a meal like this. I'm so happy you enjoyed it. Tyrion stood up from his chair, nodding in approval of the food. It was really delicious. The person happily promised. Next time, I'll cook it even better. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the hood of his cloak. Another arrogant-looking guy appeared from behind. Eating well all by yourself. Tyrion was initially silent, not even bothering to look back. Skinny guy's been making money lately. Huh? Before the guy could finish his sentence, he was hit squarely in the face. Share a little with your comrades. He was hit so hard he staggered backward. You. A crony on the side saw this and swore. This bastard. Tyrion tilted his head slightly. You wanted me to share a little. The arrogant guy, enraged, threw a wild punch. Don't be a smartass. Tyrion just stood still and used his face, an elbow to block the punch. As the guy fell, another one from behind charged with the chair. He also just used his bare hands to knock the chair aside. As the guy's eyes darted upward, he saw Euron's hand poised to flick his forehead. With a single flick, he sent the guy flipping backward. Lena, standing outside, was gritting her teeth. Don't. She angrily squeezed her eyes shut and screamed. Don't fight in my inn. Maiden appeared, bowing politely in apology. My sincere apologies. Tyrion stood stock still at his bow. I've punished them both. I will absolutely not let this happen again. He was still bowing as he explained. We've been having a hard time lately, which led to this. They were probably just jealous seeing you do so well. Then my Dan gestured. Hurry up and apologize. The two guys, frightened, bowed and followed suit. Sorry. Tyrion looked at him seriously and asked. Are you guys having a hard time? Maiden avoided his gaze, looking away. Money's a bit tight. He started to explain the situation, his hands still by his sides. In about 3 days, we won't have money for the room. But that's our problem. Tyrion directly offered a bag of money right in front of him. Take this. My Dan, not understanding, looked up at him in surprise. What's this for? Tyrion explained calmly. This is a thank you for your kind offer to let me join you the other day. My Dan was actually the one surprised to hear those words. This guy. How did you know? Tyrion interrupted with a serious face. It's not for free. Tyrion wanted something in return, so he proposed a trade. Share some information with me. My Dan laughed and pointed to his chest confidently. When it comes to information, I'm very confident. I'll tell you everything I know. The city then returned to its initial peace. Tyrion was standing alone on a high place. This is probably the last hunt in the city. As he looked around, he thought, my Dan gave me information about the next city. It's almost time to leave. In the inn, the two of them sat opposite each other, talking for a long time. There's more useful information than I expected. And no matter how many times I look at him, my Dan is a really good person. In his memory, my Dan was a radiant man. He's not as mature as Kian, but in return, he's purer and kinder. But suddenly, his eyes widened in shock at something. His sharp nose was so sensitive that it was picking up a strange scent. This smell is. Tyrion suddenly leapt deep into the forest. I hope my feeling is wrong. His pale hand was pressed against a tree trunk. Tyrion stopped in a desolate part of the forest. Before him was a murdered body slumped against a tree. This person is definitely the man, trembling with blood all over him, was recognized by him. Isn't that one of my Dan's companions? His lips curled into a smile when he saw the person. The man's eyes turned gray. Beside his motionless hand were a few small coins. Kieran sat down near the person and started to wonder. What on earth happened here? My Dan. Kieran was sitting close to the motionless man on the ground. What on earth happened here? My Dan. He could only grimace when he glanced over and saw another person slumped under a nearby tree. The man over there seemed to be dying, but his mouth still whispered, "Rabbit." Two long incisors appeared in the darkness. Rabbit. Kieran looked over and saw a rabbit monster gnawing on a corpse. Remember to subscribe to my channel to support me. It had white fur and a mouth sticky with fresh blood. Kieran watched it carefully and then slowly stood up. Its Dorite eyes had just leapt forward and bit a chunk out of a tree trunk. Kieran gritted his teeth, surprised when he looked back. So fast. The rabbit monster's sharp ears perked up. I almost got hit. Kieran took out the slingshot in his hand and spun it continuously. Kieran's eyes widened with intense focus. He whipped the slingshot in his hand. A sharp line aimed at the rabbit monster. A few small stones, at incredible speed, were aimed at the rabbit in one spot. It was very agile and managed to dodge them all. Kieran saw its movements and had to be seriously cautious. This little guy is skilled at defending against projectiles. One of its legs, with 3 sharp claws, was preparing something. It used its incredible speed to launch itself towards where he was standing. Its red eyes were fixed on a single target. It seemed to disappear from that spot in Mydra, leaving nothing behind. The rabbit monster landed after missing its target. Kieran took the opportunity from behind, having already prepared a small, sharp knife. A straight stab to the base of its neck made it howl in pain. Kieran quickly retreated, backing away. His body moved back towards a tree trunk, but he seemed to be gradually fading away. The rabbit monster turned around and attacked the tree. Its expression was fierce as it continuously clawed with its claws. Its eyes turned blood red, slashing wherever it jumped. From within the forest, white smoke suddenly rose. The rabbit monster stood in a clearing of fallen trees, roaring up at the sky. From its body, blood dripped down to the ground, drop by drop. Its 2 ears drooped, and its tongue hung out of its mouth. His black boots reappeared on the ground. Kieran returned to find the rabbit monster's corpse lying flat on the ground. As usual, he held his palm out towards it. His face was cold as he absorbed all the mana from the rabbit monster's body. A blue light flashed in his eyes. The amount of mana I absorbed is completely different. Much more than the first panther monster. His eyes returned to normal. No way. The person leaning against a tree trunk whispered, "Are you a mage?" Kieran didn't hide anything and replied immediately. Yes, I am." The person was still curious. "Why did you reveal your identity?" Kieran showed some concern and asked, "Among the 4 of you, does anyone have a family who would want their belongings?" From the man's gray, closing eyes, a tear fell. No one. And even my Dan was lying in a pool of blood with 2 lifeless eyes. My Dan. In his memory, Kieran still remembered my Dan's smiling face. Nearby, there's a big city called Orem. They have a place called the library there. At that time, Kieran was quite surprised by something. A library? He had affirmed. I heard that place has thousands of books. My Dan had said something that seemed to read his mind. You get interested as soon as you hear about books, don't you? He seriously wanted to know. Is it that obvious? My Dan picked up the cup on the table, a slight smile on his lips. But I heard not everyone can get into that library. Taking that opportunity, Kieran asked in advance. Then how do you get in? My Dan didn't hesitate to inform him. It seems only mages are allowed in. Hearing that, Kieran rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I see. In the forest, his mind was still on the conversation. I've decided. What have you decided? Now Kieran was standing in front of 3 makeshift graves. I'm going to the great city of Orem that you mentioned. His face looked a bit sad, and his eyes glistened. My Dan. He then could only leave with one last word. I hope you find happiness there. The scene changes to Kieran silently waiting in a long line. His face was a bit grimy from just arriving in another city. I was surprised just by seeing the small city of Murray. Thinking back on it now is so embarrassing. This was an even more magnificent and bustling city. The great city of Orem. He was following the crowd, slowly entering the city gate. I didn't expect so many people would want to enter the city. His eyes noticed a few soldiers guarding the gate. Are those people screening for wanted criminals? Kieran was slowly moving forward with his turn. As expected of a great city, the organizational system is much more structured. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Halt! Kieran, not understanding, turned in confusion. Halt! He began to ask what the problem was. What's wrong? The gate guard, with an arrogant face, pointed straight at him. You can't enter. As he listened, Kieran touched his clothes. I've never seen anyone with such dirty clothes. You should go over there and dust yourself off before entering. Inside the city, there was a skyscraper with many types of plants growing around it. A small Kieran stood at its base, looking up in surprise. This is the library my Dan talked about. He couldn't stop marveling in his mind. It's so majestic. It must have been built with magic. Tyran cautiously approached the gate and wanted to ask. Excuse me. The guard at the library gate replied sternly. Yes. He came closer and made his request. I want to go inside. Can you state the condition? This is a library for mages only. Tyran immediately identified himself. I am a mage. The soldier didn't believe him and stepped forward to investigate. What? He furrowed his brows and even scolded him. You dare to impersonate a mage? Are you looking to die? There really are all kinds of crazy people. Kenya even deliberately raised his hand as if to shoot Yurin away. It's absurd for someone like you to be a mage. The hand, before it could touch Yurin, suddenly glowed red. Kian's memory once again returned to him. Mages can recognize each other. They can sense the other's mana and know if that person is stronger than them. His eyes suddenly became sharp. Just by the feeling from the man's palm, his eyes turned blood red. The man was affected and had difficulty closing one eye. He was thrown backward by the pressure. Sir, are you okay? I'm fine. Kenya, his head still on the ground, was so shocked his eyes were wide open. This is no ordinary mage. This person is at least noble class or higher. He then stood up and yawned. I am Kenya, a knight of the Bantes family. May I know which family you are from? Kiran was calm, not wanting to answer. Is it required to say in order to enter? He replied respectfully. No, sir. Kenya looked down, his eyes dark. But to use this library, you need permission from the master of Bantes. Kiran was still unclear. You mean? Kenya immediately got to work. I will contact the Bantes family right away. Meanwhile, Kiran was washing his body. All right. One of his eyes opened, full of frustration. I thought it would be simpler. A maid with blonde hair also appeared there. His long arm was being carefully wiped. Kiran was sitting in the bathroom while maids washed him. How did it come to this? He suddenly turned around and ordered them. Stop. They all jumped. Yes, sir. Kiran wanted some privacy, so he intentionally asked them to leave. Is there a problem if I bathe by myself? The maids timidly replied. If we do not serve you properly, my lord, we will be punished. In this vast city, he had no choice but to accept. Fine. Do as you wish. They also obeyed. Thank you, my lord. A maid with cold brown hair was admiring something. How wonderful. A voice rang out, startling her and making her quickly cover her mouth. What is it? Turin was carefully styling the back of his hair after putting on a new suit. Is there something on my face? The cold brown-haired maid explained. Perhaps I was overwhelmed by your beauty. My lord. The other maids beside her also had to bow. Please forgive us. Turin seemed kind and gentle. There's nothing to apologize for. They spoke up immediately. Please do not be so humble with us. My lord. His eyes suddenly darted to a direction where his sound was coming from. What's that? From another direction, a person with pink hair was entering the room. Azalea appeared with a sharp gaze and an ambiguous face. Is this the guest who arrived looking like a beggar? She gave a mocking smile. After bathing and changing clothes, you look just like a prince. Tyrion paid some attention to her words. Miss, about that beggar comment. After introducing himself as Tyrion, she did the same. I am Arzalea. She wanted to know more about his identity. What is your family? Tyrion carefully and tactfully refused. I have reasons I cannot disclose. Arzalea gently rubbed her chin. Is that so? What a shame. A mysterious smile suddenly appeared on her face. This person wants to hide his identity. Then let's poke him a little and see. No sooner said than done. She immediately released a surge of magical energy from her body. Her face looked excited as she aimed at Tyrion. Show me. He was still pondering when he was startled by the magical energy. Let me see your mana.